Mildred Hayes drives down Drinkwater Road near her town and notices 3 empty billboards. She decides to visit an advertising agency and talks to Red Welby about renting the billboards for a year. Mildred believes this will pressure the local police to find her daughter's killer. We learn that Mildred's daughter, Angela Hayes, was assaulted and murdered 7 months ago. Officer Jason Dixon is driving down Drinkwater Road when he sees 2 young men putting up the first billboard, which says, "How come, Chief Willoughby?" He speaks to a man named Jerome, who dislikes Dixon due to his bad reputation for harassing African Americans. Dixon then sees the second billboard, which reads, "And still no arrests." Finally, he reads the first billboard, which states, "Raped while dying." Dixon calls Chief Bill Willoughby, who is having dinner with his wife Anne and their daughters Polly and Jane, to inform him about the billboards. When Mildred is driving her son to school, he notices the billboards. Though they bother him, he decides not to say anything. The billboards gain widespread attention in the town, with many people interpreting them as a direct attack on Chief Willoughby. Chief Willoughby and another sergeant visit Red and demand he take down the billboards, but Red firmly refuses. Dixon also confronts Red, even grabbing him by the collar, but Red remains unmoved. Mildred escalates her efforts by going on live TV to explain why she put up the billboards. She challenges the Ebbing Police Department, especially Willoughby, to do their jobs instead of using force against minorities. Later, at a pool hall, a drunk Dixon tries to confront Red for allowing the billboards. When Dixon tries to provoke Mildred, she is defended by a local car dealer named James, who compliments her TV appearance. Mildred returns home to find Robbie at the table with Father Montgomery. The priest tells her that Robbie has been having trouble at school because of the billboards. As Montgomery starts to lecture her, Mildred counters by recalling ads about guilt by association with gang members, comparing it to people from church being guilty when one of them harasses boys. She then meets Willoughby outside of town, where they can see the billboards. He acknowledges her pain and anger, but also reveals that he is dying of pancreatic cancer. Mildred already knows, as does most of the town. Willoughby tries to gain her sympathy by mentioning his illness, but she remains unmoved. People begin to express their discontent with the billboards. Mildred, indifferent to their opinions, still confronts them. When complaints arise, she visits one of the complainants, a dentist named Jeffrey. In a heated moment, she grabs his drill and injures his thumb with it. Meanwhile, Willoughby struggles with his illness while continuing to work on Angela's case, but he hasn't made any progress. Later, Willoughby visits the store where Mildred works and takes her in for questioning about the incident with the dentist. While waiting for Chief Willoughby in the interrogation room, Dixon is there to keep an eye on Mildred. She mocks him for his treatment of black people and calls the entire police department useless. Dixon mentions a TV show his mom watches, where she saw Mildred complaining about police racism. During the interrogation, Mildred claims that the dentist injured himself and is falsely accusing her. She warns Willoughby that if she gets arrested, she won't be able to work and won't have the money to pay for the billboards next month. As they talk, Willoughby suddenly coughs up blood on her. Mildred rushes to get help, and as Willoughby is taken to the hospital on a stretcher, he instructs his assistant to let her go. Later, when Mildred is driving her son home, he tells her that the billboards remind him of what happened to his sister, forcing him to relive the trauma every time he sees them. That evening, while looking through Angela's old room, Mildred has a flashback to their last encounter. They argued about Angela going out, and Angela spitefully said she hoped she would get raped, to which Mildred angrily agreed. The next morning, during breakfast, Mildred's abusive ex-husband Charlie arrives at her house with his young girlfriend Penelope. They argue about the billboards, which reveal the truth about Angela's fate. Charlie pushes Mildred against a wall, prompting Robbie to intervene with a knife. After releasing her, Charlie suggests that Angela wanted to live with him and implies Robbie knew something. When questioned, Robbie claims ignorance. Mildred visits the advertising agency to discuss extending the billboard rental. Red's secretary, Pam, brings in an envelope containing the rent, anonymously donated to keep the billboards up longer. Meanwhile, the doctor informs Chief Willoughby that his time is limited due to illness. Willoughby takes his family to the lake to teach his daughters fishing. Dixon, acting on his mother's advice, arrests Mildred's friend Denise for drug possession and informs her she won't be bailed due to previous offenses. Later that night, Willoughby makes love to his wife Anne before going outside, placing a bag over his head and shooting himself near the stable. Anne hears the gunshot and discovers a note from Bill on the table, explaining his decision to end his suffering from cancer to spare his family pain. Overwhelmed with grief, she breaks down in tears. The next day at the police station, Dixon is enjoying music when the desk sergeant delivers the tragic news of Willoughby's death. The entire department is devastated. Dixon, consumed by sorrow, crosses the street to the advertising agency and violently attacks Red, even throwing him out of his second-story window. On his way out, Dixon punches Pam in the face. Chief Abercrombie, Willoughby's replacement, witnesses the incident and promptly fires Dixon, taking his badge. News of Willoughby's death spreads, with some suggesting Mildred's billboards played a role. She faces increased hostility from the residents of Ebbing. While dropping Robbie off at school, a student throws a can at her car. Mildred confronts the student and his friend, delivering a swift retribution. Later at her shop, a man enters and throws a glass figurine at Mildred. He hints at being associated with Dixon, or possibly involved in Angela's death, but then denies it, leaving after trying to intimidate her. Anne arrives moments later, with a note from Willoughby for Mildred. She reads it and discovers that Willoughby had secretly paid the rent for the billboards to keep the controversy alive after his death. Driving home with Robbie at night, they discover the billboards ablaze. Mildred grabs a fire extinguisher, while Robbie rushes home for another. Together, they manage to put out the fires, though the messages are destroyed. Meanwhile, Dixon goes to the station to pick up a note left for him, doing so when Abercrombie isn't present. Simultaneously, Mildred sneaks into the advertising agency, suspecting Dixon of setting fire to her billboards. Dixon finds another note from Willoughby, encouraging him to pursue his dream of becoming a detective with more empathy and compassion. Mildred starts throwing Molotov cocktails at the police station. Dixon escapes the burning building, but suffers severe burns while saving Angela's case file. Mildred, realizing the severity of the situation, runs out. James, an acquaintance of hers, arrives and helps extinguish the fire on Dixon's body. When the authorities arrive, James provides Mildred with an alibi, stating she was with him. Grateful for his support, she agrees to go to dinner with him. Dixon is admitted to the hospital and ends up in the same room as Red. He tearfully apologizes, and after a tense moment, Red forgives him. Meanwhile, Jerome visits Mildred and helps her replace the billboards that were destroyed in the fire. After being discharged, Dixon hears a man in a bar boasting about assaulting and killing a girl similar to Angela. He notes the man's Idaho license plate and provokes a fight to collect a DNA sample under his fingernails. On a date with James, Mildred thanks him for his support, but their evening is interrupted by Charlie and Penelope. Charlie mocks James and confesses to burning the billboards while drunk. Feeling hurt and used, James leaves angrily. Mildred considers attacking Charlie, but instead advises him to treat Penelope well before leaving. Chief Abercrombie informs Dixon that the DNA sample doesn't match Angela's case, and the man was overseas during the time of the crime. Dixon concludes the man is guilty of another murder and joins Mildred on a trip to Idaho to confront him. During the journey, Mildred confesses to Dixon that she set fire to the police station. Dixon responds, "Who else would it have been?" They both express doubts about their plan to confront the man and agree to decide their course of action along the way. And that's where the movie ends.